Okay, morning everybody. And today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be working with Spectrum Noir's pens, marker pens, these beauties. And I'm going to be using three types of them. The normal one, their first lot. Then I've got the Illustrator, which is this one. Which this one's not got any branding on it. And then I've got the graphic one as well. And my colour spectrum today is going to be solid greys, well, mostly, with some creams. So to know what colours I'm going to use, I've drawn up my own little colour chart, very rough and ready, and I'll probably be using the lighter end of all of these, so I'll only be touching probably the G8 as the darkest. So one of the things I recommend definitely with these pens, make sure you do your colour chart. It will really help, and it's something you can quickly refer to when picking your colours. Right. So Spectrum Noir pens, why am I using them today? Because I want to. And they're a good pen. There's over 216 in the range, if I remember correctly. They are an alcohol based marker, so you know that you're going to get a really good amount of blendability. And talking of which, you also do get blenders with these pens. And having a blender is an essential tool. It's not just for blending, it's for pushing the colours back, forward, everywhere, because you never quite know where you're going to want them. So always a handy one. And so today I'm using possibly about 20 to 30 pens on this one image. My apologies if the camera plays up a bit today. I'm having a little bit of techno trouble. So as normal, any questions, the chat's open and you're always welcome. And I have a squeaky floor, so I apologise if you hear strange sounds. Right, so to begin. So as you can see, I have my pencil outline, and this horse is not a purebred Arab, I believe. She was at our local show, and I had the fortune to see her being walked around the ring. And at one point she was allowed to trot around the ring with her handler, and let's just say she went at a very nice pace. Sadly, a bit of steering difficulty, and the poor chap as he went past me was yelling steer, 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 because she came straight literally for the fence as if to kind of say, oh hello. So a very strong-willed horse, and I really want to pick up that part of the character in this drawing. And just saying, my apologies on chat if I don't respond straight away. I've only got one screen and about 7 tabs open, so Right, so to begin. Now there is a question. Now because I'm going to be working from left to right, I'm going to start with the head. But I'm just going to put down the base layers, and because they're alcohol markers, I can come back and kind of get them to reanimate by using lighter colours. And this is going to just be a hand rest, because it's not that the inks or anything are going to catch onto my hand, but you've got to remember, in our hands we've got a lot of chemicals, acids, alkalines. We're constantly producing chemicals from our bodies, so I don't want that to get onto this paper and possibly affect how the ink works. Now the paper I'm using today is a bond type paper, so it is very thin. I think it's either 60 or 80. So the reason I'm using this is that it takes the ink really nicely. I mean, normally I use a much better bond paper, but my supplier in the UK has stopped doing it, so I've got to look for a new supplier. The pencil outline I will dumb down with a putty eraser as we go. But to begin, now I'm working from an image on my computer. I just got to zoom in, sadly, because it was absolutely bucketing it down with rain on the day as well. I didn't get the best of photos. They were literally in the ring for like 3 seconds and then gone. And I will try and walk you through the pens colours as I use them, but I can't guarantee I'm going to be doing it all because I will be working very fast. And apologies in advance about any noise in the background. I live in a very full house, so there will be water running and strange sounds left, right and centre. So to start with, I'm going to be using an IGI, an IG2. The blender is going to be coming in, and I'm really arguing if I should actually put some purple into this image, but I'm going to hold back until the end. But I will be using the FS9 from the Illustrator, and yeah, you can combine these, there's nothing stopping you, it's all alcohol based ink. And that's going to just add a little bit of the creams that were actually on the horse that I saw. So I'm going to put those at an angle so I know which ones I'm picking. And let's begin. Now IGI will stand for Ice Grey 1, and then I'll probably be using a GG1, which I think is a green grey 1. Oh, Spectrum Noir Pens. You've got multiple types here. So you've got a bullet nib on this one, and a chisel nib. Then with your Illustrator, you've got a bullet and a brush. I'll walk you guys through these while I've got them. And then with your Graphique, you've got a chisel and a longer bullet stroke brush. It's kind of a quarter. I treat these the same way as I will with my Copics. So before I use one, I'll open the opposite end, release the pressure, then use the end that I'm going to use, because nobody likes ink splots. Are we agreed? Right, minimise that down, maximise that down. Right, hi ho, off we go. There we go. Right, so all set up, pen's ready, I'm just about ready. Cup of tea on the side. Hi ho. Now you'll see that I've actually not put much refining detail onto the drawing. That's because I want to do the refinement with the pens. Actually, I'll just quickly want to quickly map in one piece, and that's the bridle, which was about there. The bridle I'll actually leave till last and probably put in with a very fine liner. It was I don't know if it was an Arab bit they actually had, but it was almost like a very soft weave around the horse's head, so you couldn't almost see the bridle. I think that's probably why the chap had steering problems. So this is IGI going down first, and this layer will literally just be there to saturate the paper. So with Copics, quite often you end up having to do little circle marks to get coverage. With these you shouldn't have to do that, otherwise you might oversaturate the paper, which isn't a bad thing. Right. Because of this paper type, I'm not always going to go directly to the edge because it does have quite a good bleed distance, as you'll probably see. I'm hoping you're going to be able to see this on my camera. I don't have the most flexible of cameras. So I'm looking for the pockets of colour. That's here. And I'm just going to work on one area at a time. there's IGI. Now going in with IG2. It's slightly darker. Once again, paying real attention to my reference photo. That bit up there. I mean, these are very, 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 very juicy pens, so you don't need to apply really any pressure to the paper when using them, because once that ink hits the paper, it's gonna go wee. So literally, don't ram it down. Keep your hand loose. Even do little hand exercises before you start, just to get the idea of staying loose and flowing throughout. And once one layer dries, you can go over and darken it with the same pen. So same rules for, you know, normal alcohol markers. Okay, right, I'll quickly bring that up to the camera. So, there we go. So you can see how it's doing, and if I lift the other side, you get a nice idea. There's a really nice bleed through, but not too much. Kind of makes it look like watercolours. Right, so my next pen I'm going to choose is going to be a IG4. I'm skipping the 3 because I'm going to be using the IG2 to blend back in. I've done something quite clever here. Right, IG4. I've got my IGs that side and my GGs that side and others in the middle. Pen organising is essential, as is dropping the lid on occasion. There we go, pressure released. Right, to the darker bits. With the darker the pen, the less I'm going to be using. I'm just going to pull the colours out with the mid and light tones. And because I've got putty rubber, I should be able to erase out my pencil lines at the end. You can get a moderately fine line with these pens, so don't be too scared about going in and getting some nice detail. Once again, it's all about how you're holding the pen, how relaxed your wrist is. I suddenly think, oh no, I've gone too dark. Find the next tone down and just lighten it up. Okay, so once again, IG2, just coming in to lighten up those areas, pull them out slightly. soften any edges. And then I'm coming back in with the IGI just to soften them even more and to cover up a little bit more of the white. Because as we know, white isn't white. White can be any colour in the rainbow. It's how hard you look at it. Because you've got cast, shadow, you've got reflection, you've got refraction, all of that comes into it. In fact, I think white horses are tended to be called greys or something else. That they have a very specific name. There's not like a crystal white horse. And this beauty was kind of I don't know, it was just such an array of colours. There were creams running throughout, there were blues, greys, everything, absolutely stunner. I can't imagine how many guineas this horse would be worth, even if it's not a pure breed. So I don't even think you can get pure breed Arabs anywhere apart from their native homeland. I don't blame them for keeping the breed a secret, well, you know, kind of protecting it. Just bring that up. So I want to make that Nares a weeny bit darker, but I don't want to go too dark. So I'm gonna bring in, this is where your colour chart really does come in handy. We're gonna go IG6 and then push it back again, so it's getting that blending. IG9, oh no, too far up to go. IG10, eek. IG6, there we go. Oh, I've lost my focus again. Come on, camera. Yeah, sorry about this focus. Right, so Nares. And I'm also going to put a tiny bit around the eyes. And drop around the ears. And a bit onto the mane. Because this was quite a dark mane on this horse. Don't be afraid to do different mark making, so doing spots, dots, wherever you feel comfortable in doing, because it's all going to add texture to the end of the drawing. Then back to the IG2. Just to soften it down. Yeah, sorry about this. Tell you what, bear with me 2 seconds. That's better. Come on, camera. Now, my humble apologies about my camera today. It really doesn't like me. we go. Okay, so that's going to be my base layer. From that I can put any washes over, so I'm happy for that at this stage to now dry. Are we happy if my camera behaved for 5 minutes? Naughty thing. Right, so onto the neck. Now for this bit I'm going to work the neck from the atlas bone up here down to the shoulder area, and there's kind of like an invisible line around here, so I'm literally working almost in a horse head's length just so that I can keep that blend. Come on camera, we didn't have this problem last week. Might be because my lighting's slightly off today. Right, so the same principle again, we'll start with the IG1, if I can find it, yep, and build up. Now in this case there's an area here which has actually got a lot of creams in it, so I'm going to kick my camera in a minute. So we'll bring them in afterwards, so I'm going to get to this stage and then bring the creams in. Once again, same principle, open the pens up by fence, stopping it splatters. I need something for my camera to focus on. Right, so this area here is going to be a dark, really dark area. But I'm not going straight in with the darks, no sorry. And in fact for here, because there's a lot of the dappling, we're going to be adding in quite a lot of pattern. Right. So I'm going to come in with the putty, which has decided to go completely dry on me. Good thing about putty rubbers, you can reactivate them by giving yourself a hand massage. So I'm just taking a little bit of that pencil line out. There we go. Try and get that residue off. Right, because we don't want that on our lovely marker. Right, so dappling. So we've got a muscle here and a highlight here. Then we've got a bit of a muscle dark spot here. Then so what you're looking for is, even though there's like a pattern on the coat, you're looking for the definition underneath the pattern. So I'm still using the IGI here, and because the first layer is dried, when I come in with a second layer it's slightly darker. Got an idea. Pencil sharpener. Right, gives you an idea of the scale of the drawing as well. So IG2. Going in the darkest area first. And just picking up those areas that need it. I'm just refining them just slightly. this time, I'm going to go and get the IG6. And really push out where those ultra dark areas are. So slightly different technique now, because I just want the paper really saturated for this bit. Right, now back to the IG2. And just going over that, still keeping my lightest areas quite white. Just going over these dark areas. And then back to the IG1. To blend them all out. And soften it all down. Back to the IG2. Now we're going to get an IG4 and add in some midtones. IG2. IG4. As you can see, we're really bouncing back, forward, just going over the darkest areas and blending them right into the lightest areas. And just bring a tiny bit of the IG4 just back up here. So making sure that any colours that are used are being put all across the image, not just here and there. In IG1. Again, pushing the image out, blending it all in. So I think you can start to see the detail coming up on this one. Right, now blender pen. We're going to use a little bit of this, only a little bit. And what I'm going to do is simply mark off and blend in the most bright areas that you can see. I'm only using a tiny bit of this because I don't want it to go too bleached. This does reanimate the ink a little bit, so I'm just putting it here and there. I don't want it too harsh, otherwise you get little outlines around. Also a halo effect, so that's the one thing I'm not too keen on getting this time, is a halo effect. I'm just doing tiny little circles. Pushing a few of the other colours around, there we go. That's our upper bit of the neck. Now for the back part. As that blender dries, you can go back over with the IG one and just blend those. If it's too stark, just gently add the lightest colour, and that should help reanimate and pull all the colours back and just reduce the halo effect. So as I said before, it's all about control. Most of the time you will probably see these pens being used in colouring books, but they're better than that. You can use these pens seriously so much more. And by the way, this is not a sponsored video, this is my personal opinion. But I do enjoy the looseness, the amount of ink saturation. This is a type of pen that, like a Copic, your imagination is the only thing that is going to hold you back. So you can see I'm just adding a tiny little bit of detail on here because there's the dappling detail, but very light, so I'm not really going to add any more colours. This is just going to be IGI in the middle, and maybe a tiny bit of IG2 on the top, just under the main, to add the cast shadow. But I might even have to blend that back. So once again, just making little marks, keeping some areas quite highlighted. Put sharpener down there. Fill in the main. Now the main isn't one solid block of colour like the rest of the horse, it's got gradients. Right, let's see, IG4 I think. With things like the mains, I'm just going to block in the darkest areas. Not going to be too fussed about detail of individual hairs or anything like that. It's just blocking a little bit of the colour here and a little bit of the colour there. The human eye will always fill in the details for you. Tiny bit of IG6. A few people will notice that I do work with greys quite a lot. It's because they're so diverse. You can do a whole drawing in grey and then put a colour overlay over it. Other colours when set against grey can look far more vibrant. Look at the imagery, cinematography in Schindler's List. The little girl in red against all of the grey. In this case, I'm going to now add a tiny bit of IG8. And this is just literally the absolute darkest part, because even grey's got to have a shadow. And then we're going to go down to, let's see, I think IG4 to blend it out. I can come back and rework this. This time I'm going to use the chisel tip. And back to IG2. Just going to go back and work some of that detail on the neck. And back to the IG1. And now I'm going to come through with the blender and just soften that up a bit. And I'm actually putting a little bit of the blender in what appears to be the fully white area. I'm doing this just to get a little bit of a bleed over there, because as I say, it's not fully white, but you do still want the texture there. And little spotty dotties should help that. bring that up to the camera so you guys can actually see it. Gives you an idea. My lighting isn't great, so it's not giving you quite the full effect. Right, so on to the next bit. This bit's going to be a little bit trickier because I've got to incorporate not only the shoulder but into the leg as well. So we're going to use the joint areas as the kind of cut-off points. Also on the horse there are more distinct markings around the joints. So we're going to do the shoulder blade, which is up here, and round to this part where all the muscle is, and then we'll stop at the top of the arm stroke leg. And this is quite a light area of the horse. So darkest area was up here on the neck, and it'll be again on the legs. But for this area and the main body, it is quite light, so I'm going to be working a lot with the IG1 and the IG2. But in this case, I'm going to use the chisel because it's got a larger area to cover. I'm just going to use very quick brush marks. There we go. And that's covered that. Because I'm going to be coming through with the blender at the end, I'm not quite so worried about the marks. So IG2, a bit more refinement now. You can't, at the end of the day, mark in every single dapple on a dapple grey. You will give yourself eye strain trying to do that. But if you aim for as much realism as possible, you should get a very nice result. In this case, I'm still trying to follow the muscle definition. And as long as you kind of get the anatomy of the horse right, the rest should flow quite nicely. Bear with me. Bear with me 2 seconds, something's just kicked off. Sorry about that. Whew, cats. Who'd have them? Something attacked one of the cats, so just had to quickly zoom down and try and find out what happened. Got one in, but I don't know where the other one is. God, pets. Hey, you can never do a live stream without having one thing kick off. Right, so where were we? The neck. Now, this is giving me an interesting bit of fun. Of course, because I had to race off, the ink's dried. Oh no! Actually, it's okay. I'll just continue as I'm going. Because I've still got my IGI underneath, and the IG2 is simply the next layer, and then what I'll do is just blend it down with the IG1. So if ever you have to race off after your cats, and you leave your ink, you can reanimate it again. I suspect somebody may have had a go at a squirrel. I can see the other one now. Cats. Right, so back to IGI. And this time I'm going to use the chisel again and just go over the IG2. So to blend it out, and then to just pull out a little bit of the colour. Yeah, like I say, if you do end up having to race off and leave your ink, because you can get it back liquidy and blendable by using the lighter pens or even using the blender, all is not lost. So I'm going to go IG6 just for the shadow on the chest. And a tiny bit just here. A little bit just there. Put a bit of that. And then let's go for the IG4. And using this chisel this time. Start to blend that out. Just adding in a little bit of the darkest areas. There's a bit up here. You can see still got quite a lot of control with it, even with the chisel nib. And then back to the IG1. and just to start refining those areas. Now IG2, just pull it back a bit more. And then back with the blender, just to mark in a couple of the lightest areas. And even with the chisel nib, you can still get a nice amount of definition even with the blender. But it's for how long you hold it down, depends on how much of the bleaching effect that you will get. So next on to the next leg. So hopefully you can now see the one of the front legs. Let me just sharpen over there to try and keep my camera in focus. So same principle, IGI to start with, IG2, and then we'll probably go straight to IG6 this time, or possibly IG8, because there are some very, very, very dark areas. If you can hear a little kind of scrapey sound in the background, that's probably my cables moving as I turn my head. And that'll give you a rough idea of how many times I'm actually looking up to make sure that I'm following my reference drawing correctly. Now the leg's always complex because of the amount of tendons and ligaments in it. So that's why it's really important on this bit to pay as much attention to the detail as possible. So as you're blocking the colour, you're mapping out the muscular and skeletal parts of the horse. So back with the IGI, soften it all up. So I don't want really any harsh lines. So these horses move like clouds, so I want nice soft marks. I'm going to put a tiny bit of IGI just at the joint up here. Right, then IG4 to blend down again. I'm going to go through with an IG6 again, just to define a bit more detail. Back with the IG4. Start to fill in all the gaps. Just taking the IG4 up the horse a little bit to make sure that all of the detail blends in. And then the IG1 just to smooth it all out. And then the blender to smooth it a little bit more. So next for the next leg. Now this time I'm going to go with the, let's see, it's going to be an IG6 first. I'm going to do something a little bit different, so I'm going to start with the darkest colour. Because I don't want too much bleed going into the other leg. Now I'm actually going to bring in an IG8. So I just want enough shadow detail to keep the two legs separate. In an IG4. Now the patterning on this leg is quite different. There's actually not really any marbling or spotting. It's much more solid. Then IG2, and only a slight blend over. And IG1. There we go. And a little bit of IG4 just up here, just to smooth out that bit. And that is pretty much that leg. So we'll add a little bit more IG1 just to smooth this bit here out. So, onto the stomach. So in this case I'm going to be working from shoulder to knee. Once again, keep in mind a little bit of paper there to protect the paper. And I'm going to be using the chisel of the IGI. So move this along just slightly. Best bit about chisels, you get so much coverage. Once again, I am keeping an eye out on my darkest and lightest areas. Just take that over the hips. And I'm just making those little squirrely marks again, just in the darkest areas. If you're doing kind of bits where you're going up, butting up against another line, don't make them too sharp because you want the blend to stay smooth. So hence the little swirly marks help break out where my kind of edges are, where I've worked up to. And the blender can help you do that as well. So for the main body, we're probably going to be sticking to an IG1, IG2 and IG4 blend, because this part of the horse is quite light again. So I'm just doing random little swirly marks. I'm joining up marks and patterns to keep a seamless balance. So IG4. So I'm going to go and put a little bit of IG6 in, and only a little bit, just on the underside where it's the absolute darkest. little bit of IG4 to blend that out. Going back to IG2. This time I'm going to use the chisel just to get more coverage. And little circular motions. I'm just going to go over the darkest areas. Now for the IGI. And just blending out a little bit of the detail. Then for the blender, once again just doing spottlies just where they need to be, and then I can come through later and just refine up the detail. But it's where you put your spots that matters. So you can see really starting to push back the colours with the blender. To get that smoothness that I'm looking for. The bond paper's handling this nicely, and to show you how well it's handling it. Ta-da! Yeah, 2 horses for the price of 1. In fact, 3 horses technically. So you've got an image, a double image, turn over, you've got another image. So you get a choice. That's why I like bond paper. Okay, it bleeds through like something else, but it's the effects that I can get with it. And I still have a slight glaze to go over this with ivories, and I think I am going to bring in a very light kind of brownish red. So it's, looking at the photos, there are little spots of it, because this horse wasn't a pure dapple, so you could say this is a grayscale stage. But you can see how nice and loose and flexible the pens are, how much of a watercolour-y almost technique I'm getting. So I'm actually going to drop down onto this leggy, the third leg. So I'm just going to move my photos around. And because it was raining, bad photography day, really overcast grey, I didn't want to put my big lens on my camera, so I was working with a much smaller lens than I normally would. And that meant that I couldn't get the speed, so the legs in my photo are actually really blurry. So I'm having to use a couple of reference shots that I took of the horse to build up one horse. So as you see, I started a little bit of shadow down here. I'm just going to pull that out. I'm going to use the chisel again because it's a larger area. As I said, these pens are more than just a colouring in pen. It's not just a grab a colouring book and sit down. You can get creative with these. Oh, and Spectrum Noir do an accreditation thing. Basically you print off a few sheets, and each of the sheets has got a couple of tasks on it, so show that you can do certain type of blending, that you understand the principles of how to push back colour, pull it, and how to get an even blend with the colour groups. So you pick, say, 3 colours, and then you need to be able to demonstrate that you can blend them nicely. You do the paperwork, it's only a couple of pages, and then you get a questionnaire at the end to answer. I'm not going to say what the answers are because that's cheating. And once you've done that, you send it to Spectrum Noir team. They then assess it, and if you do pass, then you get a nice little stamp thing that you can put on your website or your blog saying that you've got an accreditation with the pens. And if you don't, you just try again. And they're very supportive. They're a lovely team there. I mean, I didn't pass the first time, but that's because I didn't actually I misread one of the questions. So I would definitely say read the questions twice, thrice, as many times, just to make sure that you actually catch the key words within them. I was in such a rush, I wanted to do it in an hour. But yeah, take your time, enjoy it, and at the end of the day, it's nice having a little stamp on your thing saying that you're accredited. But it doesn't mean that you can go out and like teach or anything, but it just shows that you're competent within the medium. So that's IG4, then IG6. Now horses have a little flap of skin between the body and the leg, and it's what helps them with their movement. I guess it's the equivalent of the skin we have between our fingers. hardest thing about working on blurry photos is trying to pick out the detail. And that's where blocking in areas of colour where you're pretty sure of, and then blending out gives you a really, really good idea. So back to the IG4, because that was IG6. So back to the IG4 to blend that out. And now IG2. I'm going to use a chisel for this, because I just want a really big saturation. IGI. Chisel again. And now back to the IG, let's see, let's go IG5, we haven't used that one yet. And that's just going to blend with all of that wet ink. And then just bring out the blender, just to pick out a couple of bits. I'm just going to use the IG5 on the other front leg, zip over here, just to push a little bit of that back. Because we got it on one leg, really should carry it through onto the next leg. Just a little bit of the IG6. Just back up here. And once that dries, then I'll probably come through with a little bit more. Because I still want a little bit of definition in there. So that's the third leg. So now for the next bit, the hip. Hip hip hooray! This bit's going to be trickier, because the way the horse was moving, some of the joins were twisted at a very strange angle. I think the horse wanted to go a lot faster than the handler could run, so it was almost straining in the back legs to match the pace. And then we got the fabulous tail at the end. So So IGI to start with, to get that saturation. Oh, and just to show on my paper, sorry, there's a mess up thing, you don't get any stuff, any transfer onto the other paper. It just goes straight through and straight on. Right. Once again, going to use the chisel tip to fill in, and that'll help me blur from this side onto the next side, because we've already got a little bit of an overlap. And you'll see some funny lines on my drawing. These were just to remind me where the darkest areas were. Double check where the white starts. There we go. It's that quick. So IG2 for the detail. Just up here, that is a tiny dorsal line. That's what I mean by the horse's back end was swinging, so you've got the dorsal line just showing slightly, which is absolute beauty though. That gives you an idea so far. With the stapler. So you can see how well these pens cover the image. And they've still got another layer to go. So this is just like the first few layers. So you can really go as much detail as you want to with these. Well, depending on your paper, of course. So I'm going to go IG4, I think. A little bit difficult this bit because I've got to try and map in the tendons from like I say, a very blurry photo. And these horses have got amazing limbs. So IG6. And once again, I need a tiny bit of this, just where needed to make the most definition. Yep, looks a bit extreme, but remember we're going to push that down. So I'm going to use the IG4 to blend that back in. So that gives you a comparison. So still a little bit of work to do. So going back to the IG2, start blending that all in. And I'm also starting to add little texture marks. Then I'm going to bring the IG5 in, just to push a little bit of the tones. Then back to the IG2 to just meld them in. So I don't want to go too dark, otherwise it's going to look very, very, very strange. Then IG1. Now back with the blender, just to define a couple of areas. Right, and now for the tail. So oddly enough, I'm going to be using the grey on a tiny bit of the tail. So we're going to start with let's start with IG4 this time. So we know where the darkest area of it is. And once again, like the mane, I'm not going to add in tons of individual hair details. But I'm looking for the shapes within. Because the grey only goes really to about there. This is where the creams and such will come in. So then the IG1, just to pull that back. And to add in a little bit of detail for the tail. IG5, push the darkest areas. IG2. IGI. And that is roughly, give or take, down a little bit more. That's pretty much the base layer for the horse. So now I can come in with the creams and the ivories to add in some of the detail. So in this case I'm going to be using an FS9. And I'm literally just dabbing it. I'm just putting a tiny coating in the key areas. And then I'm going to use a GB2? That can't be right. No, GB2, which is caramel, just to define the hooves a little bit. Blending them back with the ivory. And then adding a little bit of ivory to the socks. Because the ivory is a light colour, it's going to have a bleaching effect on the greys, so I had to be quite careful where I put it. And a bit more of the caramel in there. And on this hoof I'm actually adding in more IGI because this hoof didn't have much colour to it, it was more of a solid dark colour. But I add a tiny bit of ivory into the leg. Then just moving the ivory up through the horse. So not in large amounts, just enough to hint that there is a different colour within the texture of the dapple. Mostly in the areas of shadow. Now on for that tricky tail. Just warming up my putty rubber, so I just want to take out the outline. But you can see the pencil marks are pretty much blended into the alcohol. That's why also having very light pencil marks will benefit. For this drawing, so that you could see where I was working, I have done a darker pencil mark, but normally I would only draw it out in a H or even a kind of 5H or something like that. I wouldn't use a B pencil or anything too dark. So I'm just going to take out that pencil line because that was just a rough guide of where the tail area was. I think my putty rubber has had it. Right. I'm doing this quite lightly because I don't want to damage the paper. So this is quite a fragile paper. Right. Yeah, putty rubber is getting too worn out. So that I don't damage anything. Brush. There we go, keeps that nice and clean. And then back in with the ivory. And I'm going to go do a few little bits of the tail. Just to indicate that there is something there. So coming from the grey, because it is a gradient. Not just random strokes either. I'm trying to keep the fluidity of this shape of the tail as it was on the day. And then using a beautiful blender, pull some of that back. And then we're going to go back to the IG5 and just start to define a little bit of the shadow. And then the IG4, just soften that down slightly. which allows you just to take out any harsh lines. And then the IG2 to really soften it down. So that is pretty much 90% done. So I'm going to add a tiny bit more detail to the chest. Well, up in this neck area, because it needs to just be a little bit darker. And then just to find a little bit more shadow here and there, and that will be it. So this time I'm going to come in with the, let's see, I think we're going to go for the IG5 because we need to just use a little bit more of that. Just making very small marks now because we're just going to refine it down. Just add a little bit to the chin. And to the nose. Just the eye. So like I said, this is now the kind of refining stage. And then just go through with the IG4 just to soften that down. And then the IG1 again, just to bring that in. So to put in the bridle, like I said, because it was a kind of beaded, very, very fine bridle, what I would tend to do is use a silver gel pen. Now, gel pens, of course, aren't archival, which is a pity. Yeah. Why is it whenever you want to use one of these, it's all dried up? I'm not using Sharpies. Let's try this one. That's better. And I'm going to use a gold and silver just to gently mark out where, sorry, not gold and silver, gold and bronze, just to mark out where the bridle goes. So this was such a fine one, you could actually barely see it against the horse. Well, that's the first. Just managed to take the lid apart. And just using a very light dotting motion, because I don't want it to detract from the horse's face. And it just goes back on the ears. Just going to work over some areas with the IG1 just to tone them down. So I think that's going to be it. So that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, pets included, is how I would use the Spectrum Noir pens, their markers, the standard marker, the illustrator and the graphic, to create a realistic Arab breed horse. And that's using all the pens, the blenders, and just going backwards, forwards with them, working the inks into each other to create a smooth blend. So this was done on a bond stroke typing paper, which of course means that we get the beautiful secondary image on the other side, and that can show you how much your paper is bled through. And then on my safety paper, because with these markers always have safety paper, I've got a kind of translucent outline. In fact, that I could probably use, and that shows where my darkest, most heavy applications of the ink are. So I hope that's helped inspire you. I'll probably do a little bit of refining to it, but that's pretty much it. So definitely check out the Spectrum Noir range, have a look at their website for the accreditation program, because it's, like I say, it's a nice one to do, gets you used to using the markers. And also please check out Crafters Companion's YouTube channel. They've got a lot of really good little videos with hints and tips and techniques. You can see demonstrations on there. and see if you can find some of the presenters on social media like Facebook. There are several pages, like on Facebook, there is a Spectrum Noir page there, so I'll definitely recommend joining that, and that's a place where you can learn hints, tips, and handy things. But overall, as you see, yes, that's taken me a couple of hours, because we started 8ish, so 8, 9, 10. Yeah, so it's taken a couple of hours, and like I say, I still have a couple of bits to refine. And then at the end of the day, that is that image done. The only thing I would say is, with this one, I can't sell my original because not all the pens are light fast. And yeah, I could put it behind light fast glass and all, but I would rather go and get prints from a local printer and use the prints for cards or whatever I fancy, and then as I'll store this one in Specialist Archival wallet, and each year I'll give it just a gentle touch up just to make sure that the colours stay bright, vibrant, and it keeps its radiance. But yeah, overall I'm really happy with how that's come out. I feel that I have got a true representation of the horse, and the fluidity and the softness of the dapple on the coat. So thank you very much for watching. I hope this has inspired you to go and get some pens, or just go out and get creative. So till next time, thank you for watching, and happy drawing to you all.